Welcome to the Power of Nature podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Waldo. In this show, I talk about how connecting with nature and the natural world can help us connect with our true selves and our own personal power. I share stories of how I've learned to do this as part of a regular and ongoing practice, and I talk to others about how they do the same. So join me as we go on a journey of learning about the power of nature and the impact that it can have on our own lives. Welcome to the Power of Nature podcast. This is the second episode of this show, and I've been podcasting for a while, since 2018, but I've found that the best way for me to go about podcasting is to kind of let the message, let the material just kind of come to me. And one of the big ways that happens is actually through nature. So let's dive right into some stories about the power of nature that have kind of affected me over the last 2 days. Some experiences I've had that maybe you relate to, because maybe you've had experiences like this. So one of the first things is that it's so hard to know where to start. I'm going to start with yesterday. Yesterday, I was driving out of our driveway, which we go down a long dirt road on our property before we hit kind of the road that we join with our neighbors. And it's wooded, and we have fencing for our horses on each side. And we just moved our horses to a pasture, kind of our third pasture. We have 3 main pastures. We just moved our horses to a third pasture, kind of closer to our house. And so the pasture that our horses had been in is now empty. And it's interesting because the horses create a different relationship with the wildlife when they're there, and when they're not there. So what happened yesterday is I was driving to drop a painting off to a painting that I had done to a place nearby. And as I was leaving, I was just kind of reflecting on things. And then I had my car window open, and I'm driving down our driveway, and I've got these like wooden fences on each side. And all of a sudden, literally, it was like a hawk was within 12 inches of me in the driver's seat of the car with the window down, flying right next to me, alongside me. And it took me a moment to even kind of realize what had happened. And what it was is the hawk had been sitting on one of the wooden fence posts in the pasture where our horses are not right now. And I guess for some reason I startled him. I don't know why I got so close, because I've had lots of interactions with hawks, but I've never been this close to a wild hawk, at least not unless it was up in the tree. But yeah, actually this is even closer than up in a tree. And it flew right alongside my car, and then it kind of was joined by another hawk that was flying from the opposite side of the driveway, the other pasture that we have that's also empty. And, this is one of the joys of living on this property. We often, every year that we've lived here, we've discovered a hawk family that lives in the trees, the big, tall evergreen trees above, above this pasture. And every year we have this amazing experience of kind of being part of their world and being part of their lives, and really seeing them fly around and hearing their calls. Usually, the 4th of July, we tend to see them suddenly gone. And it's because here in Montana, a lot of people shoot off fireworks on their own properties. And so our house, even though we don't shoot off property or fireworks in on our property, all around us, it's almost like, looks like a fireworks from Disneyland. And usually the Hawk family disappears from that night on. And I don't know, maybe they're scared of the fireworks. Maybe it's just part of their pattern. I don't know. But one of the amazing things of having a family of hawks that lives on your property is you get to interact with them and you get to see them, and they fly overhead. And, there is something about this. And I was thinking about it. So I've had 2 other podcasts that are still, at least right now, currently going. One called Creating from the Inside Out and one called Riding from the Inside Out. And I took a long hiatus from them. And one of the reasons I took a hiatus was because I started to really get disconnected from myself. I didn't know that I was doing that, but I did. I followed what kind of seemed like something that made sense, and, seemed like a good idea, but that started kind of not serving me. And that's in Writing from the Inside Out, episode 18, and Creating from the Inside Out, episode 25. This is what I talked about because I shared the same episode on both shows. And really, what that episode was about was just kind of getting off track from listening to myself. And I talk about that in those episodes, or that episode, which was shared as those 2 different numbers on those shows. And the kinds of things that I got off track from are the kinds of things I'm talking about in this podcast, the power of nature. And part of what I'm talking about related to these hawks, what I find is that so many times in my life that I have been kind of gotten, I guess I would describe it as off track from myself. I go off kind of in search of something, in search of an experience or something that I think something in my family is going to gain or I'm going to gain. And it seems, like a good idea at the time. And then it ends up that, and this isn't with everything, but it definitely was my experience of late, was I kind of got on this like track, if you will, on this wheel of, if you will, of trying to find something outside of myself that really, I know, having been down this kind of road before, that I'm never going to find outside of myself. But sometimes it can take a while to remember that and to kind of get back to listening to myself and not following kind of the pull of whatever it is that's kind of drawing me that, seems like a good idea at the time, but then kind of becomes an experience where I start to not feel good. And then I start to not feel even like I feel even less good and less good. And I feel more bad and more bad and more bad. And what that is it's almost like this wheel of being off track from myself over and over and over again. And what is amazing is that I have found through my life that connecting with nature, being in nature, connecting with the natural world has always helped me get on track with myself. And that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in this show. My experience with horses also have helped me do that. But I think it's because the innate energy of nature is what I love and connect with when I really connect with what I love about horses. And that's why I have a podcast called Riding from the Inside Out, because it's all about that. And also the other thing that I find is that creativity, my own creative expression, which very much is influenced by nature because I paint either completely abstract paintings, which are inspired by nature and the beauty of nature at my core, because I'm always looking at nature and observing nature and just appreciating nature, or they are still, like abstract landscapes. So they're intended to have somewhat of a look of some kind of aspect of nature or a landscape, but they're more loose and abstract in form. I don't paint realistic landscapes at all. But in either case, in all of those cases of my painting, connecting to my own creativity is also kind of like, it's the same root that I connect to when I'm really connecting to my horses and when I'm connecting to nature. And so, it was kind of this crazy thing that I kind of got off track from myself, of listening to myself and tuning into myself. And what ended up happening is I started feeling like not good and not good and not good and not good, like more and more and more and more, until I couldn't take it anymore. And then I had this period where, I pulled back from the things that I realized weren't benefiting me and serving me, and I stopped engaging in them. But there's always a period, because I've had this happen a number of times, when it's like I don't know how to, it's almost like the beauty of me connecting to myself is so quiet, so subtle, that when I get myself back on track, or start to get myself back on track of listening to myself, it's almost like I feel in the beginning I'm so used to like needing things to be really loud and extreme that I feel like I'm kind of in a no man's land as I start listening to myself again. And I have to start letting myself just be quiet and be still and not have answers. And it is in the stillness and in the quiet and in the not having answers that my connection to myself and a feeling of kind of flow and energy and just feeling like things are balanced and right in my world come. And really, nature is a huge way that has happened. I think it can happen for all of us. And it certainly has happened for me over and over and over again. Oddly enough, though, I feel like so many times when I've been kind of like off track from myself, it's like I go into nature from that standpoint, and I kind of feel like I need it's like I'm needing nature to be all these big things, like to have some big, loud, amazing thing to happen. And in doing so, I miss being open to all of the little things in nature, the magic in nature that you can experience when you slow down and you stop looking for things outside of yourself, or you stop trying to find things from some other place. And what I find is that the more, each time when I go through a transition like this of kind of being off track, and then trying to kind of like listen to myself again to kind of get more on track with myself, that I go through this period almost like I could walk out in nature, but I don't feel anything initially. But if I keep doing it, if I keep just doing it, the practice of it, where I just do it to do it and I stop doing it to kind of have some kind of, amazing experience in nature, I just let myself go out into nature to be. And in that being, that is enough. And then it's like it opens a door to another world of the magic that is available to us via nature. And I've experienced this time and time again, and I feel like yesterday with the hawk was a bit of that, because I feel like I'm still, as I talked about in the two other podcasts, episode 18 of Writing from the Inside Out and episode 25 of Creating from the Inside Out, I kind of got off track from myself. And what I mean by that, off track from myself, is where it just kind of feels like things aren't working in my life. I feel like I'm not in sync with myself. I feel like things are out of balance. Things just don't feel right and good. And I know that always for me is a message of going deeper into myself, listening more to myself, listening to what my heart is calling me to do, my body is calling me to do, my soul is calling me to do. But sometimes it can be hard to listen to those things when, like, I feel like some part of me is calling me to do these other things, to get these things outside of myself that I think are going to give me something that I think that I don't have. And what I find is that nature never does that for me. Nature never is convincing me of something I don't have. Nature is always showing me more, showing me what I already am, showing me what already is in the world, showing me beauty and magic and amazing kind of like experiences that fill me with wonder and joy and peace and a sense of rightness. And that is one of the amazing powers of magic, of nature. They're synonymous in my mind, actually. So that's kind of why I did that slip, the power of nature. But really, it's kind of the power of nature's magic, really, and the natural world. And so here I was kind of getting back on track, if you will, of starting to listen to myself more. And, I used to see animals like birds a lot on our property, all kinds of animals and wildlife. But what I noticed is in this period in which I was kind of like off track, I wasn't seeing so much. I was seeing deer, but I wasn't seeing like the geese that I often see. I wasn't seeing hawks and eagles. But it's amazing because when I do start to slow down and listen to myself, it's like I start seeing them in spades. And I feel like the experience driving down the driveway with the hawk flying right next to me, it was such an amazing experience because I felt like there's something about my energy and the hawk's energy that was lined up in that moment. I know as I was driving down the driveway, I was feeling really good. And it was like the hawk flew right next to me, almost like as if we were aligned. We were like partners flying. I was in my car and he or she was flying, but it was like we were like connected and flying alongside of each other in a way. That's what it felt like. It felt so magical and so amazing. Today, I went out to feed our horses, and like I said, we moved them to this new pasture where there's lots of grass, and we kind of had to tweak it a little bit because we have 4 horses now, and the last time we had this pasture set up, we only had 2, so we kind of had a little incident the other night where we tried to feed them, and my youngest horse, who's the biggest horse, who's the most dominant in our little herd, kind of went after some of the other horses' food when I was trying to feed them. So we had to kind of like make this new little enclosure for him to go into, so that the other 3 can eat kind of peacefully. And then when everybody's done, then we let the younger guy out, and then they all go back out to the field. Well, they're in the field already, but they go back out from where we feed them in the pasture to where there's more grass. And so that happened this morning. My younger son came out with me, and we had this really, good experience of feeding the horses, where my younger guy went into this smaller part of into this enclosure, and I closed the gate, and then we fed everybody. And then the horses, wandered off. I opened the gate back up, and they all wandered off. And, I find that my experiences with my horses, and I talk a lot about this in the Riding from the Inside Out podcast, is just about being with them. To me, being with them is way more satisfying these days than riding or showing or doing any of the things that I have done in the past with them. Just feeding them, just observing them, just seeing them. And to me, that's part of the power of nature and tuning into the, to the natural world and animals, even domesticated animals like our horses. But after we let them, kind of go back out to graze, it was like there was this amazing, I don't know, it was like a symphony of hawk sounds coming from the pasture where the fence was that the hawk flew right next to my car yesterday. And I kept hearing them all, and I wasn't sure how many they are, but I just kind of walked from where the horses are out to this other pasture and was just following the sounds, following the sounds of nature, following the sounds of these hawks. And then I spotted one up in the tree, just kind of sitting there, and then another 2 flying overhead. And eventually the one that was in the tree flew off. But, it was kind of a reminder of the magic that we can experience in just the simplest seeming things, when we don't have an agenda, when we don't have an objective, when we're not like, we need to do this and we need to get this and we need to get here and we need to get there. And we just kind of let ourselves be where we are and in what we are. And so many times when we do that in nature, it is so rejuvenating. It is so healing. It is so inspiring. Not because we're trying to get to the inspiration and the healing and the whatever. If we go out and we're like, we're going to go into nature to heal ourselves, I find that doesn't work. What works is when we just recognize the power of nature enough on its own to make it a practice, to go into nature as a practice just for whatever experiences it gives us in that moment. And being open in that moment to whatever it gives us is so empowering. It is so healing, I find. I find that when I do that, I just feel a sense of peace and well-being and connection, clarity, knowing, creative inspiration for my paintings, but also for other areas of my life. Like some of my greatest solutions with my kids, like solutions, I mean, things in which I've wanted to support my kids or my family in certain ways, and I haven't known how to do it. But when I go out into nature and I don't have an objective and I just let things be, it's like ideas come, solutions come, inspiration comes, knowing comes from nature and my connection of just letting myself be in it. And this is really part of, and key to what I want to talk about in this podcast, and I will be talking about, because I think I've seen how this has helped me in my life. And if you're listening to this, I'm guessing that maybe you feel some kind of draw to nature. And maybe you resonate with some of the things that I'm talking about. And we can kind of share our, even though I'm not sitting in a living room talking to you, just by me talking and you resonating with it, we can kind of share a feeling of this amazing experience that we each can have, when we tune into the power of nature as a practice. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about a lot on the show, and what I wanted to share today. I wanted to just share these simple stories of the hawks yesterday and the hawks today that I saw, that, it's kind of hard to put to words as to how things shift when you start to go into nature just to do it. You're not trying to conquer nature. You're not trying to make anything happen in nature. You're literally just, as a practice, engaging in tuning into nature and being in nature, whatever that is. For me, For me, I love the mountains. I love forests. I love trees, and I like being by natural bodies of water like lakes. Well, that's not true. I don't like rivers so much. Although, actually, I do like rivers in Montana. So let me change that. Rivers, creeks. I mean, I live in Montana now because it's the kind of nature that speaks to me. I also love the ocean. But what kind of nature speaks to you? I spend a lot of time not thinking about, but exploring what kind of nature resonates with me. What is it that I feel good going into, and what is it I feel good just being in, where I just feel okay in my soul being there? Do you know what kind of nature resonates with you? If you don't, I encourage you to find out, because for me, discovering what kind of nature, resonates with me, and then going on the journey that was kind of a crazy journey we went on to move to Montana, which led us to live in this place. While it was terrifying, I am so blessed and so appreciative that I allowed the call of nature and what I loved about it to call me to this place, because now I don't have to go. I used to kind of have to go like on almost like vacation, or just on the weekends to go away to the places in nature that, I love. But now I get to experience that on the property where we live. And I did that because I spent time in nature, tuning into myself and listening to myself. And then that called me to more of that. And that then called me to more and more of that, etc., etc. So I encourage you to think about, what parts of nature do you love? Do you love the desert? How can you explore that? Do you love, the woods? Do you love big forests? Do you love mountains? Do you love the ocean? What is it you love? And then what I find is that the more I start listening to what I love, and the more I start engaging in it as a practice, that it benefits me in ways I can't even describe, in ways where I have an experience with a hawk that I can't put to the kind of words of what I felt. I mean, yeah, you might be like, yeah, Michelle, she was driving down her driveway and a hawk flew alongside her window. Well, that does not describe at all the experience of what it was like. It's nothing like what it was like. The hawk and I were connected at some kind of level that I can't even describe with words. And if you've experienced anything like that with any aspect of nature, I think you know what I'm talking about. And it is magic, and it is purely powerful. And that is a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in the episodes on this show. So I look forward to continuing the discussion with you next time. Until then. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Power of Nature podcast. To learn more about me and my other offerings, you can visit my website at michellewaldo.com. That's MICHELLEWALDO.com.